So welcome everybody to today's fourth and final Essential Services Accessibility and Civic Engagement Digital Equity Outcome Area Working Group. I'm Scott Adams. I'm the Deputy Director for Broadband and Digital Literacy, and we're very glad that you've joined and that you've come to participate and lend your subject matter expertise to this very important initiative. Next slide, please. So wanted to recap real quick the agenda for today. We're obviously have the welcome. We're going to do a summary of the key takeaways from prior meetings. We will have an opening panel. We have a number of really good subject matter experts. And that will lead into a community discussion. And then we'll have two segments at the end, about 10 minutes each, on two important data gathering surveys that we've put together for both residents and individuals, and then we'll do the next step and the close. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of housekeeping here. In order to best view this meeting, we suggest you select the side-by-side speakers more for viewing experience. We do have an ASL interpreter here. Do want to let you know that if you need closed captions are available. Choose the CC closed caption on your toolbar and select show subtitle. And we invite anyone to introduce themselves in the chat to let others know who's here and who's at the table. If there is a question after the presentations or the speakers, please use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of the bar. Next slide, please. And so we wanted to start off, as we said, this is the fourth of 4 meetings, and we wanted to present some of the key takeaways from the previous discussions. And I think the first is that a continued theme here is that access to infrastructure and affordable services is critical to people having access to essential services online, to accessibility and civic engagement. That there is, a relatively low adoption of assistive technologies. That's including hardware and software. That there is a need to create websites and web services with the end users in mind to help those with various needs, which include making materials available at a accessible reading level and in language. Additionally, the final is that entities that provide services online need to make processes and forms easy to navigate. Next slide, please. So the state digital equity process is a multi-pronged approach. We have a digital equity planning group, these 6 virtual working groups that are aligned around the policy outcome areas that we are hoping to empower by achieving digital equity throughout the state. We've got our survey tools and our regional workshops. And so we wanted to kind of start off with some of the common barriers and themes we've seen across these multiple areas. And again, that's, first, a lack of access to online services, resources, and processes perpetuate a system of exclusion for many of the covered populations and most vulnerable among us that leads to digital inequities and impacts outcomes in many different areas. The second, again, is that internet service, where it's available, is still unaffordable, and the lack of affordability of service and devices limit the ability of the covered populations to participate in and benefit from essential services and civic engagement. The third is really, kind of universal, we've found, is that the limited availability of culturally inclusive resources and services online, as well as the digital literacy programs to train people to use them, also perpetuate inequitable adoption of the internet, but also the inequitable ability to fully participate in modern life. The fourth barrier is something that we've heard specific, I think, to this working group, but in other areas, is that the rapid pace of technological change creates a difficulty for many users that the state's digital equity plan and the Broadband for All program are helping to empower. And so the next slide, please. We also wanted to start out now, this process, we have engaged with over 6,000 organizations, entities, subject matter experts, and residents. And we are still culling through all of the recommended strategies we've received thus far, but we did want to tee up, prior to the panel and the meeting, some of the recommended strategies we have heard. The first is that entities that provide digital services should or could champion benefit programs for broadband service and devices to ensure affordability. And that's, the Affordable Connectivity Program, that's a benefit to subsidize home service. There are other low-cost service programs out there that are critical to bringing folks online. The second we've heard is that the need to develop new and fund new and existing digital navigator programs to help the various covered populations. The third is there could be the development and deployment of standardization practices for online services, which could go to the next one, which is a standardized look and feel of all civic platforms online to improve ease of navigation. The fifth one is to improve online security and privacy policies to protect internet users from fraud. And then the last one is, particularly in a digitally equitable world, providing online access to public meetings to increase public participation. Next slide. So with that, like we mentioned, we have a great lineup of subject matter experts and partners here to tee up the conversation. The first person we would like to introduce is Vincent Lee, the Senior Legal Counsel for the Greenlining Institute. Vincent, welcome, and we'd love to, hear from you, Greenlining's perspective.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, so as was noted, I am Vincent, Senior Legal Counsel at the Greenlining Institute. We work on racial equity, and it might be particular working on closing the digital divide for low-income and communities of color. We ran a program in the city of Oakland where we worked with community benefit organizations, CBOs, to essentially provide digital navigator services, provide digital literacy, instruction, and provide laptops and outreach around, the ACP and Lifeline programs. In terms of barriers, we noticed among, the covered populations and particularly communities of color, was just what we targeted, right? There was a lot of digital literacy gaps. 25% of those we surveyed said they were not confident in using the internet to use government services. And this was 45% for Hispanic and Latino populations, right? There was a lack of devices at home, which stopped access to the internet. If you don't have a laptop at home, you're not going to want to sign up for the internet, and your family and your kids are going to suffer for that in terms of educational outcomes, finding a job, you name it. There was an affordability gap on being able to actually pay for internet. We have programs now like the ACP to address those gaps, right? But beyond that, there was an awareness. A lot of people didn't know about those programs, which is what we had outreach strategies and events to get, low-income folks to sign up for that. But yeah, there was an awareness gap. And when there was even, awareness of these programs, there was a lack of trust in them. Particularly, a lot of folks are using ACP with their mobile phone, maybe not for their home internet. And there's a lot of issues with how that is marketed, perhaps by unscrupulous, folks on the street, or there's just we notice a lot of distrust in those programs. So there needs to be better education from trusted messengers. And in terms of gaps, I think for the digital equity program for California to think about is how do we engage local CBOs, the grassroots organizations that actually have these personal connections with covered populations that can provide information and it will be trusted, right? So for the Town Link program that we worked with in Oakland, we worked with 10 CBOs. They were, churches, community centers, food banks, workforce development centers, medical centers, and they have a good personal relationship with the community. And they were able to sign them up for digital literacy classes. They were the ones who provided the laptops and outreach around ACP and Lifeline. And what Greenlining did was provide them the technical assistance so that they could, provide that information and sign people up for these programs. And we provided funding and we worked with the city of Oakland to do that. So we thought that is a successful program and something that California should adopt more statewide, this very local approach that engages community CBOs and trusted messengers to actually provide these resources to the covered populations that need it. So I will stop there.
Well, thank you very much, Vincent, for that. And thank you for Greenlining's partnership in the whole process. And, there's a lot of stuff that you mentioned there, particularly, the lack of awareness of the tools to empower, vulnerable populations to getting connected and overcoming the affordability gap, both in terms of service and devices. And so part of this essential services working group is that, if we live in a world where all services are online, all services are essentially essential. And so that's kind of the question that we ask as we're going through this is, what role can those who provide services online in raising awareness of those programs? We talk about the cross-pollination. We had the healthcare working group earlier today, and someone had mentioned, if we're making all these really accessible, tools and information online, are we just perpetuating inequity because we're not bringing people along? So really appreciate the perspective of Greenlining that's important, and also reiterating the need for overcoming that kind of historic mistrust of government and corporations that play a central role in broadband for all by working with local, trusted partners, trusted messengers that are in enough community to help do that work. So thank you very much. We're looking forward to more from you and part of the trusted messenger or in the community discussion, but I want to hand it back over to Cole Prisbilla to introduce our next panelist.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And so next up is the program specialist, Julio Tamayo, who's from the American GI Forum. Julio.
And thank you, Cole and Scott, for the invite. My name is Julio Tamayo, and we focus particular groups, three particular groups in the Central Coast, kind of like covering three different counties: San Luis Obispo County, Ventura County, and Santa Barbara County. And as a program specialist, I'm a member of the American GI Forum, which is a chapter of the National American GI Forum that started in 1948. We've been in business since 1958, and then we adopted the component of the Educational Foundation in 1991. And since then, we've been providing multiple services to our community, the hard to reach population, the veterans, and the aging. And I'm going to highlight very particular programs that we have ran during the pandemic to assist with the digital divide, and also while the pandemic, the post-pandemic timing. I want to highlight that we participated through some digital literacy at multiple counties while the pandemic, providing Chromebooks through the school districts to families that were in need. And we also participated connecting approximately 5,000 to 7,000 families during the emergency pandemic through internet services that Xfinity was providing at the time. It was a subsidized. It was it was internet for low-income families that started at $9.99 at the time. And we, as a nonprofit organization, we were able to connect multiple families, and we were very particular with the hard-to-reach population, because they were through this program, we were able to connect up to 3 different internet services that we still do that, throughout California, and it can only be done through a CBO. And we're able to connect 3 different services on one particular household. And so the counties that were involved was like Oxnard County, Colusa County, and we were doing digital literacy, providing a couple of classes that had to deal with the cyberbullying during the pandemic, and also had to do with computer literacy. Those were very, very good highlights of our program. We also have participated trying to assist the hard-to-reach population with food banks, institutionalized food banks, where we, during the pandemic and post-pandemic, we have institutionalized food bank that we've serviced anywhere from 200 to 300 families per month. And with those food banks, we offered the opportunity to have those families connected to low-cost internet and also other services that we are providing as well. So now families have access that we reach out as families that we reach out through digital platforms such as Facebook and so forth and so forth. So we've networked with other, colleges and churches. We do a lot of immigration, and a lot of the gaps that we have identified is, California is changing dramatically with their housing and structure, and a lot of the hard-to-reach population are people that are not, living in one single household, but they're living in multiple households that are now being built. And so we do a lot of the events. I'm particularly involved with coordinating the events in the community. We do a lot of the door-to-door. We do swap meets. We do Downtown Friday, which is kind of like a local events. We do the farmers market. So we do a lot of the strategize, a lot of the outreach through events that are happening in the community. The door-to-door, again, I want to highlight. And then, at last, I like to say that we, as a nonprofit organization, servicing the hard-to-reach Mixteco population in particular, we have staff that speak monolingual Mixteco here in our office. And so we've identified that over 25,000 Mixteco, Zapoteco families live in the county of Santa Barbara. We've identified that there's about 19,000 veterans still living within our county, but about approximately 1.5 veterans are living with throughout the state of California. And so another one of the biggest highlights is the ACP program that's come to subsidize a lot of the people that we've connected in the past that were $9.99. Now, the ACP program is providing those families with a zero free internet. We connect approximately 142 families per month. And yes, it is 142 families per month. We have multiple staff that assist through that. and we are definitely contributing to the closing the digital divide as well. So the American GI Forum again is servicing the hard to reach population, which is a big concentration of migrant families coming from the South because we are an agricultural community that is all the way that is geographically it spreads from Santa Barbara County all the way to the San Luis Obispo County.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julio. And thank you for reiterating, I think, the thought of meet them where they're at, right? That is, you're nailing it on the head with like your door-to-door events or the door-to-door and then going to meet them at the farmers markets. And it's about strategies of, it's not just about embedding and needing broadband adoption, but it's about ACP outreach. It's about the other critical services, and then pairing it with those services that are already within a community, like the food banks, the food distributions, and the places where those covered populations like veterans and lower income would find the information. So I really, really resonate. And I mean, sounds like it's working, right? 140 families per month, and you've connected 5,000 to 7,000 families. That's an amazing number. And I'm sure it's absolutely contributing to the ACP adoption in your region.
And Cole, I just want to add kind of like to reinforce and sort of uplift the work that AGIF is doing that Vincent talked about is that, you know, the unique Mixteca population that is, you know, in that area is AGIF is providing broadband adoption support. They're getting referrals for that and providing assistance in both English and Spanish and Mixteca. Which is just absolutely really cool. We had you know, the opportunity to engage with a lot of members of that population in Santa Maria and Seaside.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much, Julio. Appreciate your time and your sharing. One thing, there is a question in the chat about the presentation. Yes, as a reminder, all the slides, transcript, and recording will be posted on the portal. And I also bring that up because I'm hoping that you can use the chat. Please feel free to use it to kind of discuss in the chat about the panel, ask questions in real time and comment, and we'll kind of bring it in if we have the opportunity. So next, I'd love to introduce and bring up the Director of Business Development at the ARC San Francisco, Stephanie Digham. Stephanie?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to hear the work that everybody else is doing. It's really, really inspiring. So again, thank you so much. Like Cole mentioned, my name is Stephanie Digham. I'm the Director of Business Development for the ARC San Francisco. The ARC San Francisco partners with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities to achieve their life goals. This can be anything from health and wellness to independent living and education and employment. I primarily in my role support inclusion initiatives and mission advancement with private entities, but I also identify and utilize public and government funding and resources in order to support inclusion initiatives and other goals. So when we're talking about barriers, I think some of the things that have already been mentioned are lack of plain language tools and things that are adapted to support individuals from various learning styles. Particularly tools that individuals can use independently. Language comprehension and proficiency is something to consider. Many of the individuals that we serve live, not mostly, but many live in group home dynamics, and some of their supports might not speak English as their first language, and they also might not have basic levels of digital proficiency themselves. And so making sure that those kinds of tools are available to people and that support networks are also being trained. Okay, I took some notes, so I'm just going to check my notes really quick to make sure I'm getting everything. Oh, so yeah, again, a lack of knowledge and use around affordable connectivity programming. Sometimes there's an inability to wait for government subsidies around repayments and those kinds of things. And one of the things is some of these programs, you're not able to sign up multiple users in one home. So again, if an individual lives in a group home and somebody else is utilizing that address for a service, others in that home might not be able to utilize the service. Some of the gaps we've seen successes in filling some of the gaps by providing like small group and one-to-one training to support digital literacy. I want to echo other groups that mentioned leaning on community-based service providers to facilitate and implement training programs. Again, meeting people where they are, and trusted service providers that have been doing this for a long time in the communities that need support. Again, a big gap exists in the inability to access current technology, things like tools, tablets, iPhones, smartwatches. And again, that's that perpetuation of inequity. We even see that inside our own community. Individuals who are at SSI, SSDI might not be able to afford tablets and things that other individuals in the disability community are able to support. And this will cause a gap because things like emerging in new technology, there's amazing apps now that can do things like reading tones in the room and those sorts of things. But if you can't access a smartwatch, then you can't access those tools. Another gap is the complexity and inaccessibility of many government websites and forms that makes it difficult to access resources or even do things like filling out surveys. So some things that the ARC is doing, we currently provide, again, workshops, one-to-one digital literacy, internet safety support. We've had mentors come in and do like 10-week trainings with individuals to support their digital literacy needs. We do this in multiple languages. We're really blessed in San Francisco to have service providers that speak Chinese, Spanish, Russian, Tagalog. I mean, it's pretty incredible. We created a lending library for tech tools. So that was really wonderful. We were able to support a pretty substantial pivot. We provide services to around 800 individuals in the Bay Area, and we were able to provide a pretty substantial pivot during COVID to virtual service delivery based on this training and then a lending library that we set up. I'm currently working with a couple private entities to adapt their existing digital literacy curriculum for multiple learning styles. And then we're going to scale that nationally using our chapter network and do some train the trainer style workshops with community organizations as well to introduce and help implement the tools that we're designing. So that's all for me. Thank you all so much.
Sorry, I was getting to my mute. I was writing so many notes because there's so many great things that are going on. It's just the list of programs that you're providing as a digital navigator organization is just it's amazing, and it's really impressive, and it's the inclusive programs that you're doing that address many of the barriers that we've been discussing. So that is super relevant, super cool, and it's the accessibility and the multilingual pieces of this, and the other piece that you brought up, which is the lending library, kind of thinking of ways and additional ways to overcome the adoption piece with devices is really cool. And I think it's a model that could be very interesting to pursue. Scott, do you have anything else?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, but I really thank you, Stephanie, for reinforcing what we continually hear about this, keeping up with emerging technologies, like they come so rapidly that needs to be a part of any digital navigation or ongoing, systemic and programmatic support here is that ongoing technical support. I think Jacob Johnson, the co-chair of this group from the Department of Rehabilitation the other day was talking to Nicole and I, and it's like, you can put a menu of technologies and accessibility, hardware and software out there, but it takes more than just putting it out there for people to adopt. There needs to be that support there.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. And thank you, Stephanie, for joining. We look forward to having you continue to join the conversation. Next up, we'd love to have Senior Operations Administrator for AARP, Strat Maloma. Strat?
Thank you. Let me just also start off by just thanking you for the opportunity to be here and share with you some of the things that we're working on. So as Cole and Scott said, I'm Strat Maloma with AARP. Something a little bit about AARP is we are the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. Our work is really focused on ensuring that empowering folks to have a choice in how they age and how they live. A few areas of focus for our work includes financial security, personal fulfillment, and health security. Here in California, we advocate for 3.2 million members on a number of critical priority areas that include caregiving, affordable and accessible housing, reduced prescription drug costs, veterans, militaries, and their family resources. And we really work to make communities livable for all ages. So one thing that has really been a priority focus for us in the last couple of years has really been the ensuring that we can participate in ensuring folks have digital equity, as I guess it's defined in terms of, having the information capacity to fully participate, whether it's society, democracy, and the economy. And that just truly makes sense for us because we have seen, especially during the pandemic, just how heavily reliant on having access to technology and the digital world has become important for our older adults and our constituents. So there's a couple of research that AARP as well as our affiliates OATS did over the last few years, and which really kind of spelled out and laid out some barriers that folks within our membership age group are facing. And I'll just share a couple of those, some highlights of those findings. One of the things that we really found concerning was the adoption rate between older adults. We looked at age groups of 30 to 49, 50 to 64, and then the 65 plus, and unfortunately found that the 65 plus were kind of really lagging behind in terms of how they were adopting new technology. And I guess this goes back to some of the points that some of the speakers made earlier about the complexity of the new technology that came out, because some other research findings that also came out as barriers to adoption was there was a feeling that the new technology is not being designed with older adults in mind. There was also a feeling that it's too complex. Having to regularly update your devices or your platforms was just a little bit too much. So those were all kind of contributed to being barriers for older adults when it came to technology. But then there's also aspects of racial disparities between, when you look at adoptions between who has high-speed internet in their homes. About 80% of the 50 plus white population had, compared to 77 and 71% for Black and white. So those numbers go down. Also looking at folks living in by geography, looking at folks living in urban, suburban, as well as rural, was also a big, there's also significant differences there in terms of the adoption rates. So a few things that we've been working on to try and help with making sure that all the adults have access to what they need to participate through in the digital world was we're really working on making sure that folks are informing our constituents about this rare opportunity that's happening right now, being involved in the digital equity planning process so that they can lend their voice to what they're facing in terms of the challenges in terms of digital equity and what they think it would be a help to them. So we're doing a lot of community outreach and education, letting folks know about the process that's happening right now, how they can weigh in. Some ways that we've been doing this is by distributing the digital equity surveys and asking folks to participate, and also really spelling out to them what's in it for them. We also hosted a teletown hall across the state where we had speakers. Speaker Adam Scott was on there, where we talked to over 3,000, close to 4,000 folks, letting them know and answering their questions about the process, about what we're looking to deliver with this digital equity plan. We also conducted an interview with the California News Service, which can distribute the information to media outlets across the state so that we continue to spread it, to share the information and educate folks about what's going on. And then we're also going to be distributing, or in the process of distributing, the survey to over 2,000 few thousand text contacts that we have and asking them to respond and weigh in terms of what's important for them when it comes to digital equity. And then we'll also be sending out an e-blast shortly, and we'll be reaching over 500,000 emails letting folks know about the digital equity and asking them to respond. One thing that we started off very early on was to inform and promote and get folks to sign up to the Affordable Connectivity Program. That was really a big push for us. And then we also used mailers for that, because one challenge that we have in terms of providing information is, how do you get to the unconnected? That's why those two elements, the text as well as mailers, are always really important part of our communication mix. So I'll stop there. Those are a few things that we've been working on and I continue to work on in terms of supporting closing the digital divide for Californians.
No, Strat, it's incredibly appreciative. I mean, AARP, they're such a great partner, and it's really obvious and really true that you're just leaning in to make sure that the older voices are heard in the process, and really making sure that a critical covered population that relates to kind of the barriers of technology and digital equity are really being addressed, and especially when it relates to their health, and making sure there's access to other governmental benefits and programs. So really appreciate the work of yourself and AARP. So thank you again, Strat.
Thank you.
And next, finally, we're going to round out the panelist section with the education director at the California Museum, Naomi Pretty. Naomi?
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak, and it's been wonderful to hear all of the other panelists and the incredible work across the state. So yes, my name is Naomi, and I'm the education director at the California Museum. We are located in Sacramento, and we really come to this conversation from the lens of civic engagement and education, and the role that museums have in promoting and nurturing a healthy democracy through education and engagement in civic learning. So we are an independent nonprofit, but we are housed within the Secretary of State building, and we are also, directly across from the state capitol. So we really do see the gears of civics working every day, and it's so much our mission to make sure that we share that with everyone who comes into our building, either in person and digitally. A lot of the stories in our museum focus on communities whose stories have been marginalized from history. And we want to make sure that there's opportunities when engaging in civic action to think about the rich history of our state in an inclusive and justice-seeking way. So I would say that so the most successful program that we've been able to implement in the digital space is our educational and virtual field trip programming. It came out, like so many things, came out of the pandemic, but has outlived that sort of initial crucial necessity and expanded so that, in the past few years, we've been able to reach 25,000 students across the state of California, about 18,000 of those who come from under-resourced communities. And we know that because we provide free programs for all Title I schools. And a few elements of the programs that we provide that we really take seriously are the interactivity of the programs. It's one thing to provide sort of passive learning opportunities to essentially, tell students about civics and to tell students about history. But so much of our work focuses on having interactive experiences where students themselves are engaging directly with making meaning of the history of California, and also making meaning of how that will inform their own civic engagement and participation. Two programs in particular that we run, we're the home for the Unity Center, which is a historical and contemporary exhibit on the history of activism in California, and engaging learners in how the history of activism and their own identity will inform their participation. And we offer that virtually across the state. And then also our Time of Remembrance program, which deals with the history of Japanese American incarceration during World War II and helping students understand the civic conditions that allowed both the incarceration to happen and have followed through with the legal cases that both ended the incarceration and then offered reparations for the Japanese American community. And again, these are live interactive programs where students are directly connected and making claims and making arguments and asking questions and directly participating. It's really helped to tap into pre-existing networks. We have about 30% of our programs come from referrals between teachers. So trying to find out where those the communities are where we can first get in, and then it can be shared by word of mouth. We know that's really successful. And then the other biggest thing has been adapting our programs based on the devices that classes have. So we know that some classes are resourced and have one-to-one ratios with students, and some don't. They might be able to project, they might be able to participate in other ways. And every program is specially tailored to however the students will be connecting so that we can maintain that high level of interactivity and engagement with no matter what device access they have. I would say the biggest barriers we have right now are the patterns that we're seeing and the gaps that we're seeing are so many of our programs are in urban and dense settings and rural schools either haven't been able to have the high-speed internet to connect to the programs. Again, interactive programs demand high speed. You can download a video that's pre-recorded, but to actually have the active engagement between our educators and students thus far, we've really needed high speed to connect. So thinking through alternatives, but then also looking forward to the opportunity for more rural schools to be connected to high-speed internet. Just thinks about, there's an infinite amount of resources on the internet once students are connected, but there are not an infinite amount of high quality resources there. So we really work to try to promote that. We also are looking to think about how we can tap into other pre-existing networks to reach populations outside of school communities and thinking about other ways that we can connect our resources as the de facto museum of the state of California to people across the whole state and not just locally. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. I'm looking forward to the community discussion.
No, thank you, Naomi. And thank you. There's two things that, among all the things that you said that were impactful and great. One thing that really struck me is you brought it back to one of the main barriers, right, is that there's an access to infrastructure barrier just for the essential services like yours to be able to reach a certain community. And then something you said that was really, I've heard it in different ways, but you said it so great, is that your program or some of your programs that created because of the pandemic have outlived the pandemic, right? And when I think of that, I also think of like the civic engagement piece, where due to the pandemic, a lot of meetings had to go online. And that's where one of the strategies came on about how can we continue and allow access to those meetings online, because it's obvious that there's interest in that and it's outlived the reaction to the pandemic. And so, Scott, I'd love for you to wrap us up on this panel and add any final thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Cole. And I just want to thank all of our panelists, both on this meeting and the past. It's so relevant here. And thank you, Naomi, because bringing it back to the pandemic, we had a persistent digital divide beforehand, and the pandemic just exacerbated that. And with all of the rush to work from home, school from home, healthcare services from home, a lot of the digital interventions that occurred enhanced this digital transformation to where really being connected is the difference between being able to fully engage in life and being cut off. And so whether we're talking about, greenlighting or American GI Forum, getting people connected, or we're talking about, AARP, making sure that seniors are connected for a whole host of services, or the ARC, being a stand for like accessibility and technology education, and then the museums, like right there, the innovation of the museums to create the virtual field trips and the interactive spaces. From an equity standpoint going forward, there are folks who are constrained by place and technology who aren't able to access, those tools. So the work that we're all doing to both get people connected so that they can have access to those services, and then have accessibility features built in place. I'm just wondering, Jacob Johnson, since this is the last essential services accessibility and civic participation. When we talked the other day or at the beginning of the week, you sent we were talking about how important accessibility is, and you sent that video about the Apple VR headset and how user design employing accessibility features at the beginning is so critical. Maybe you could close this out before we go to the community discussion.
I think we have to unmute. Yes. Here you go, Jacob. You should be able to go now. There you go.
Right, great. Yeah, thank you, Scott. Yeah, it's really important, and I know I've heard it mentioned here today that one of the most important pieces of this technology, if we assume that it's going to be accessible, which a lot of people are working really hard to make sure the technology is at least usable by everyone, but we can't forget as new technologies are introduced. And Scott, I think you're referring to the video I sent about how Apple is building in a screen reader to their new Vision Pro headset. I don't know if people had a chance to see that, but I was really not at all surprised, but very happy to see that not only are they building accessibility in, and other companies are working on this too, right? Google and Microsoft, they're doing similar work with their technology, but just the fact that we're saying, okay, as we introduce this new thing, one, how are we going to make sure everybody can use it by building the accessibility into it? And even more exciting, what new things are possible with this technology that weren't before? So if we have a virtual headset that's fully accessible, what happens to people who aren't able to use their manual dexterity, right? It could potentially make that easier. For blind people, not only do they have a screen reader, but they also have cameras and other sensors that can detect things going on around them. For people who are deaf and hard of hearing, what would happen if you could have real-time captioning of conversations that are taking place right there in the room with no other technology involved? Exciting times. And so just a matter of making sure that we build all of the capacity and the other pieces, the learning and the availability and the costs and all of that, the work that everyone has been talking about today, and that some of the focus of this entire group is to not only make the technology available from a it exists perspective, but also to make it available from anybody can get their hands on it and learn how to use it and reasonably function with it as part of their life. So yeah, exciting times. And thank you, Scott, for letting me say a few words.
Thank you, Jacob.
All right. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Jacob, for ending with that really cool note. And let's keep that excitement going. We're going to bring the slides back up, and we're going to have a community discussion. There's 87 of us on this meeting, so I'm hoping we can keep it lively, and I can't keep up. And the goal here is that you can use any of the technology that's available to us in this Zoom. Please use the chat. Please use the reaction raise your hand features. Next slide. And we'll try to get to as many comments and questions or ideas. The prompts to get us started, and hopefully the conversations about the 5 panelists on the barriers and gaps and successes they're having with their organizations help to kind of get your juices flowing about these prompts, which are: how can providers of digital service encourage broadband adoption and enrollment in ACP? What parties are most critical to encourage providers of online services to standardize web design and
Hey,
user
Cole,
experience?
there you go.
Okay, and what support is needed to increase capacity, to eliminate digital equity barriers, and improve outcomes in your region? Final thing I want to note is please feel free to answer any one of these questions. If one of them is particularly of interest to you this moment or exciting, please answer that question. We don't have to go in order of questions. So again, I said there's 87 of us. I don't see any hands raised yet. This is the opportunity. Perfect. Thank you, Alex. Alex, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I guess I'll speak more to number 3. And I have a few kind of recommendations. I know we're in the last one. There's a lot of common resources around the state that maybe we can crowdsource together. So maybe leveraging the state of California's GitHub repository and making a repository focused on our digital equity efforts. And in that repository, include resources on digital literacy, assistive technology, ones that are statewide, like everyone has to know when something new from Apple comes out, when something new from Android comes out, some new from Windows. So those common things that don't need to be localized could go in this GitHub repository. I know New York does something like this for mental health, so that could be something. And then a big one is we need to just, as a state, do a better job in collecting disability demographics. And then if we identify someone as a disability, asking them what assistive technologies they use. And I'll put some more specifics around this in the chat because there's other environments like UPMC in Pittsburgh that are doing a great job of this that we can emulate, because a lot of our folks with disabilities are affected by CalAIM and are users of Medi-Cal. So if we can capture their information properly in Medi-Cal, we can use that as an entry point to get them connected to assistive technologies and get a better sense at the state of how we're serving people with disabilities. Thank you.
No, that's great, Alex. I love the idea of a broadband portal central hub. That's great. And it looks like we already have another one. Vincent, I know you were a panelist, but do you mind also reminding everyone where you're coming from in California and then the organization?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm from based out of Oakland, working at the Green Mining Institute. Yeah, and I'll talk about number 3 a little bit as well. You know, to the extent that, you know, California is going to try to work with, you know, local trusted messengers, CBOs, there's a lack of, you know, technical experience, technical capacity when it comes to maybe teaching digital literacy classes or helping folks actually enroll in, you know, the ACP and programs like that. What a lot of the CBOs can do is get folks to the right resources, right? They can sign people up for digital literacy classes. They can get them through the early stages of the enrollment process for ACP and programs like that. And I think what would be helpful is, you know, as California thinks about, you know, how can we get a provider of digital literacy classes that, you know, if a CBO recruits, you know, 12 people that speak Spanish that want to learn how to use government services online and how to navigate, you know, the internet, can they get an instructor to come out? Can there be an online instructor, and then the CBO can provide, you know, a space and like kind of the assistance to get people connected online, and then the centralized provider can give the class, the instructor can give the class to those people. And that's the model we used in Oakland. We got the CBOs to recruit folks for a class, you know, at least 15 people in each class. And then they worked with a different instructor, which we connected them to, that tailored the classes to like the language and the kind of content that the class wanted. So, you know, as we think through how do we scale up digital literacy classes, services like this, especially for organizations that may not be, they may not have the time or capacity to like learn how to teach a digital literacy class, having some centralized resource could be helpful.
No, definitely. I think that's a really, really good call out, which is where does both the capacity and the education come to further digital navigation and digital skills? Because you're right, there's a piece of this that we have digital navigators, we have those that can help train with digital skills, but how do we increase the amount of those digital navigators, right? So there's going to be capacity and training. And actually, this might be a really good, I can just call you out, Stephanie, to kind of speak on what you've learned and kind of what you're sharing here in the the chat about making and creating sustaining networks of providers. You can unmute.
Sorry, I thought I
Yeah.
did unmute. Oh, I started my video. That's what happened.
Yeah.
So you figure we would have this down, right? After all this time. So we come to these types of events and it's beautiful, right? We're able to share information in this space, but we don't all necessarily keep up with one another, like long-term around, again, best practice sharing and those types of things. So if there was some sort of a monitored and controlled environment where we could all come to establish kind of resource sharing, best practice sharing, and honestly link up our networks, right? Because again, if we all, what is it? Someone said this to me so beautiful one time. If we're all knocking with individual fists, right? It can sound like noise that kind of get kind of drowned out. But if we knock with one big fist, that's more impactful, right? So creating systems of communication between service providers in order for us to identify goals and things that will be like the things that we're all talking about, what's most important around a broad swath of the communities we're attempting to serve, right? It's sort of like, first we build the house, right? Do things that all of us could benefit from. And then we look more at like individual goals to support the communities. So again, that system and that network, I think would be so wonderfully useful.
No, I love it. Love it. And Scott, maybe you have something to add here.
Yeah, well, Stephanie, I thank you for reiterating what we've heard throughout the process. And I know different people are coming into the process at different times. And so really our task that began several months ago was use a grant from the federal government to develop a state digital equity program that identifies digital equity barriers for covered populations, develop strategies to overcome those and have them tied to how you are going to improve outcomes in different policy areas around education, health, digital literacy and inclusion, workforce and economic development, essential services, accessibility, and civic participation. And so we have established a statewide planning group that consists of 22 different state agencies. It kind of expanded the Broadband Council to help advise on the process. We've established these 6 working groups to help identify the barriers and the strategies that will inform our plan. We've had the local workshops to bring people together, and then we've got our survey tools to gather information from organizations and residents to inform the plan. So your point is there is a method to the madness, if you will, and that we've all been very intentional while we're coming together because the planning group will more than likely be transitioned to an implementation group, and that these working groups, there's been calls for those that we will have these be ongoing quarterly community of practice where we can bring folks together in the process of implementation to use that. So thank you for bringing that together. And the thing that we all have to keep our eye on the prize on, our plan is not just a plan that's a piece of paper. It's a plan that's going to be supported with, plus or minus a very large, substantial amount of digital equity capacity grant dollars to fund a lot of the solutions that we've been talking about here.
No, I mean, that's absolutely fabulous to know that there's sustainability in these practices is really, really hopeful for me. And I'm just so excited to engage with everyone involved to make these things happen. It's wonderful to hear. Thank you, Scott.
Well, everyone, I think we like to say it like, that we are an inclusive group and our charge was to build a really big table and a big family holiday table that includes all folks in the states, and you've got these little subgroups, but yeah, we're not letting folks get off the hook once the plan is developed, because everyone's going to be required to implement that plan.
Okay, awesome. And looks like we got another hand raised. Strat, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Cole. Yeah, so, just building a little bit on question on point number 3, prompt number 3. You know, something is that I always think about is, you know, we live in a very kind of diverse state, and you know, having language for our diverse communities, which is really basic and simplistic, that folks understand, you know, what in this for me, you know, why is this important for me? I sometimes think maybe the language or maybe the way we speak about it with the communities that we're trying to address might be a little, you might maybe a little bit of a different fit. So having very simplistic, what's in it for me and why this is important for me language, I think would help to reduce some of that barrier there. I think that's there. Something else that, you know, that I've always thought was really, really important is there are communities which are skeptical to give out their information, especially when it comes to signing up for things like the ACP, which is really important for them. Having those FAQs that digital navigators can use that you know, common FAQs to address those reasons why maybe they're not signing up, I think would also help to you know, reduce that barrier. So wanted to suggest those 2 things. Happy to hear what other folks think.
No, those are great, Strat, and it's we've been seeing similar responses using multiple languages in survey responses, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and seeing that it's a bilingual effort for digital equity, right? It's multiple languages, and then also yeah, I really liked your last piece on how do we connect more. So let's see, is there any more hand raised, any comments?
Well, Cole.
Go ahead. Yep, go ahead, Scott.
I have a comment to make, and it's something that Alex spoke about, like how can we create a central repository of information? And so one of the things that I wanted to share with folks is that, you know, coming out of the pandemic, the governor, you know, issued an executive order on broadband that directed the Broadband Council to create a Broadband for All action plan. And one of the actions that was required of the Department of Technology was to create a Broadband for All portal, which is to be a central repository of information for broadband in California. And I don't know if many folks here have been able to see that, but there's information on the massive infrastructure investments on the middle mile, the PUC's last mile programs. There's also a ton of information and widgets to both support affordable connectivity program enrollment and track enrollment by state. And so, you know, when we've talked about things in buckets like outreach materials that are in language, you know, we've got a big state. It doesn't make sense for everyone, every local entity to translate materials in the same different languages in each place and to incur the cost for that. So we're looking at ways that the state can leverage the broadband portal to create like a digital print shop with customizable materials that are essentially translated in a number of different languages that trusted partners can actually put their logos on and customize. And that could be a way to save capacity grant dollars to support the actual, you know, the outreach and the engagement and the enrollment assistant and the tech support. And the same thing about being a place to host training resources and best practices. So that's something that we're looking at potentially could be part of the digital equity implementation. We know that it's the folks in region, in county, in community, and neighborhood that are gonna be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So we wanna make sure we divert capacity grants to go to those efforts. But there is potentially a role where the state can help centralize some of the other stuff so that folks can, you know, engage with community. So I'll stop there.
No, perfect. Thank you, Scott. And additionally, I put in the chat the Broadband for All portal link for all to be able to use and access. And May, let's unmute and you'll be our last comment before we head off to the next part of our presentation. May?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm also having video. I'm here in Palo Alto, and I'm the chair of the People-Centered Internet, and I'm engaging on digital equity and inclusion globally. A lot of the stuff that I'm talking about globally was invented here in California. And I have been dying for a chance for us to do some of this stuff in California. So I just want to say, I put in the chat a link to documentation of networks of communities sharing and learning, which were done for 10,000 communities in the US in the area of health. There are models for this. Let's do it. We don't have to invent some of this stuff. The models began in 1996. We have almost 30 years of learning that we can build on. Let's do it.
No, that's awesome, May. And I think we talk about all the time about how the governor and the state of California have started broadband initiatives all the way back with the Broadband Council in 2010. And we've heard many times about a lot of initiatives that started in California in the 90s. So it's really exciting to hear that you have some exciting endeavors and resources to share. So thank you. And now let's move on to the next slide. We're going to talk about the Digital Equity Survey. We're going to invite up Sean Doherty, who's with the Broadband Equity Partnership. Sean?
Thanks, Cole, and thanks, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today to get to talk about and demonstrate two additional data collection methods we have in addition to the 17 in-person workshops that CDT held and all of these working groups that have been going on for the last few months. I'm going to talk about the Digital Equity Survey as well as the DEEM tool, the Digital Equity Ecosystem Mapping tool. So two additional ways at which we're gathering information from the community. All of that data gathered will be integrated into our state digital equity plan. So we're asking the call to action today is to have everybody on this call engage in both of these efforts. But I'm going to first start off with the Digital Equity Survey. Next slide, please. And this survey is for individuals, for households. We really want to get this survey into the emails of people, into the hands of people, into their cell phones, so that we are hearing from the residents of California about their experience with broadband in the state of California. We've put a lot of effort and thought into making it as accessible and to the broadest population possible. It's mobile friendly. So if you happen to have your smartphone with you, you see that QR code there. If you actually want to scan that, you'll see that the survey pops up nice, clean, clear. It's available in 14 languages, and we have built-in audio functionality for each of those languages. And that has been really helpful for people who maybe have low literacy or low vision, and has been just a wonderful tool that has been utilized. And as I talk a little bit further, how about we actually bring up the demo and I can walk you through it as I kind of talk a little bit more about it. And again, just to reiterate, this is for individuals, this is for households. It takes about 10 minutes. It took me 7 minutes to complete. So it is a simple tool. It is clean. You can see just from this page here, you can access any of the other languages by toggling up in the corner, and it's reactive right away, instantly changing to the language of choice. A little bit slow on the Wi-Fi today, but that's all good. And then down at the corner, at the bottom corner, you actually see where this play button is. All of these pages have actually been recorded in that language as well. So not only can you access all pages of the survey in a given language of choice, that you can actually hear the audio version of all of those pages in that language. And Fiona, are we able to do a demo of a language?
Công bằng kỹ thuật số của tiểu bang California, khảo sát cộng đồng.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's nice, clear, succinct, and I don't know if you want to click through to the next page. You'll be able to see, the first question they ask, are you a resident of California and are you 18? And if you answer yes to both of those questions, we want to hear from you. And so we collect a little bit of demographic information. What is your zip code? Do you identify with any of the covered populations? And then it goes into a lot of questions around, do you have broadband? Do you not have broadband? What are those barriers to broadband? So again, we are collecting information on barriers and solutions and their day-to-day integrate or engagement with broadband. And all of that data will be implemented into our digital equity plan. And we're proud of this work and we think it's working. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott so you can present some of the data. So I think we're going to go back to the slide presentation.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to note that this survey was reviewed by, I think, somewhere between 20 and 30 representatives from different state agencies, and the language was reviewed by between 30 and 40 local entities. For the content perspective, there's you know, and in talking about the languages, we you know, wanted to make sure it was accessible as we could get it. We know that California is a diverse population and there's more out there, but the audio functionality was specifically things we built in conversations with our accessibility advocates. So let's go to the next slide and we'll show you, we're kind of proud of the responses thus far. This has been out in the field now for about 3 weeks. And as Sean said, folks can either receive an email or a link on their computer and do this on a laptop or a desktop, but they can also receive the link via a text or email on their mobile phone and complete the survey on their mobile phone. So throughout the state, we've received 5,768 responses. We've been heavily promoting it over the last week. So we're proud to say that the meetings we were at yesterday, we've had a 1,200 respondent jump between now and then. And a big shout out has to go to Greenlighting, American GI Forum, AARP, the California Museum, and the Rural Counties Representatives of California. If you look, we're trying to give a sense of the progress that is being made throughout the counties. I don't think it's any surprise that Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Santa Clara are at the leading respondents. But to prove that it works in other parts of the state, you'll see that the top 10 are, you know, Santa Cruz, Inyo County, Imperial, Tuolumne. You see Sacramento there, then Plumas. So, you know, this survey is working, and we're pleased to say there's a 70% response rate for those who open the link and those who complete it. Can you go to the next slide, please? And when we talk about in the top of this discussion how important it is to be in language, we are really encouraged by the responses that we've seen. On the left-hand side of the column, I'm sorry, it's a little low or small, but 83% of the responses have been in English. You know, 5.7% in simplified Chinese, 5% in Spanish, 3% in traditional Chinese, and then you can see Vietnamese, Korean, Punjabi, Arabic, Russian, Persian, Tagalog, Khmer, and Japanese. So it's really working, and to the extent that folks on this call, you know, really a call to action to help promote this out. The table on the next slide, or on the right of the slide, really shows how important this survey has been to getting feedback from the covered populations that were directed to really develop the plan and direct investments to. So 2,800 self-identified as members of ethnic or minority groups. Strat, thanks to AARP, you can see almost 2,200 individuals 60 or plus, rural community members, and just going down the line. I know, Jacob, we showed you this the other day. We're up to 700 folks who have identified as having a disability, and there's veterans, et cetera. So What we wanted to show here is, number one, thanks to everyone who helped create this survey. Thanks to everyone who's helped promoting it. It's working, and we'd like to get as much response as we can. To open till June 30th. And Sean, can you actually show some of the tools that we've created to help people promote this out?
Sure. Fiona's going to bring that up, and the toolkit that Scott just mentioned is available on the website, and those links we will include in the chat, as well as will be sent out afterwards. We really want you and encourage you to use these resources. And so this is the Google Drive where all the documentation to help you distribute the digital equity survey is stored. I really want to call out the social media one. I know a lot of people communicate with their communities via LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter, however that is. You can see that we have social media assets developed in a number of languages, as well as English. And if you go in there, there's not just one for each language. We have numerous social media assets. So this is hopefully a way that you can go in there, easily take an image and help communicate and send this out to the communities that you serve. And I also want to, if you want to go back one more level, Fiona, the invitation letter that is also available in a number of languages, and this is also easy if you want to email your constituents. It's pre-drafted language. Feel free to modify so that it's in the tone of your organization, but again, these are pre-drafted in your language, includes the links again to help make the burden lighter on you in reaching out to the communities that you serve. And so these are just some of those assets that are in that toolkit, and again they will be shared again in the chat as well as afterwards. And with that, I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions or if Scott wants to add anything before moving on to the Deem tool.
Yeah, I would just say thank you, folks. We're making a big push here, and the goal in a state as big as ours is to try to engage with as many folks as possible, and we're been able to engage with around 6,000 to 7,000 folks through the workshops and the working groups and things like that. But as Sean said, in a state of 40 million, if we could get to 10,000 or over surveys, it would be great. And I know there's a lot of members of the planning group here, Department of Social Services, GoBiz, a lot of the local county organizations. There's still time to get big response. Like I said, we're starting to see a hockey stick here. So would appreciate your assistance in amplifying this. And we will send out all of this information in an email to you all immediately after this meeting.
Wonderful. All right, Fiona, do we want to bring the slides back up? As I transition to our next way that we're collecting data, and this is the digital equity ecosystem mapping tool, and this is to gather information from at the organizational level. So whether you're a nonprofit, a CBO, a government agency, a religious organization, a school district, a library, we really are encouraging everybody on this call to complete this and to also think about your networks. We always hear about collaboration and partnerships and consortia building. Please share this tool with all the organizations that are in your network as well. And Fiona, why don't we just start doing the walkthrough of this tool as well? You'll see just in terms of formatting, it looks very similar to the survey. Up at the top, you can toggle between English and Spanish, so easy to go between both of those languages. Again, this is for organizations such as yourselves. Takes about 10 minutes to complete, and I will, after talking about some data, I'll show you a toolkit that will help ensure that it takes those 10 minutes. This first page is really collecting covered populations that you serve. I know that covers many people on this call. You cover so many and you serve so many of these covered populations. That's really important data for us to collect. And as you go a little bit further, I think this is just kind of actually a good guide is if as you're completing this, you're looking at these other organizations and you say, oh, that's right, I work with the community health clinic on this project, or I've worked with the community college, really using this list as a guide to think through who some of your partner organizations are that you could share this with and encourage them to complete as well. A speaker on another call said, we're looking to find those pockets of excellence throughout the state. And I couldn't agree with that sentiment more. We want to hear from all of that excellent materials. And a little bit further down on this first page, they'll ask about programs. So whether you do device distribution or digital skills training or workforce development, clicking on those will prompt additional questions further on. To learn a little bit more about those programs. How many people have you served? How many people do you hope to serve and grow and scale? Maybe where some funding sources came from, just so that we have really a holistic view of all the services and programs that exist. And I think one of the best things is on the last page of the survey, it's a text box or a place where you can upload reports and data. And so, Vincent, you talked at the beginning about all that, you conducted these surveys and you had all of that great data. We would encourage you to upload the report there, at the end, so that we could have access to all of that great data as well. So also white papers, research reports that you've done with other academic institutions, annual reports, data, anything like that. That is all wonderful information. And we have an easy upload and or paste function there. And we can talk about actually how we're doing in terms of receiving responses to this if we want to go back to those slides again. So this tool has been out a little bit longer than the other survey. And to date, we have, I believe it's a little over 300 organizations. I guess next slide, Fiona, that would be great. Perfect. Yes, we've heard from over 300 organizations providing documentation. This is just a heat map of the county. So we just showing where we've heard from organizations. We know that there are organizations that support residents in every county, and we want to hear from as many people as possible. Thrilled that we're getting great coverage again down in Riverside and Imperial, as well as from San Diego, LA, some of those larger counties as well, and then even up to the north, Humboldt County, getting a lot of great data. So just, again, encouraging all of the organizations here to respond to it yourself and share it with your collaborators. And on the next slide, obviously a lot of the people are here representing government or public organizations. This is just, data for your using of how we are, of what data we've received to date. Obviously great progress with the state governments. We know that there are more than 22 city governments that exist, so we would love to see more engagement there. But overall, we're thrilled with what we're seeing in terms of engagement by government or public organization. And Scott, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add about that before going on to the demo of the toolkit for this.
Yeah, Sean, I would just like to add to that this is critically important. The National Telecommunications and Information Administration, which is the entity who has given us the Digital Equity Planning Grant and will give us the digital equity capacity dollars, has instructed all states to do a comprehensive asset inventory, if you will, of organizations, of programs, of funding sources that are currently being deployed in our state to support digital equity and digital equity outcomes, or that could be deployed to support outcomes and be implementation partners in the plan. So it's a real important opportunity to map your organization's work as both a partner in developing the digital equity plan, but to be considered as a implementation partner moving forward.
Great, couldn't agree more. And so we're gonna bring back up the toolkit. And we are going to show you some great resources to help organizations be able to easily complete this DEEM tool. So under right there, it's the DEEM survey instructions. Yes, right there. There's a PDF. And if you look at that, that'll essentially preview all of the questions for you. So again, if you do device distribution, section 3 talks about that, and it'll allow you to see the questions, maybe prepare some of the answers, gather some of the data, and just make ease of filling out the form that much easier. It's clear we have this form in both English and in Spanish to accommodate both forms. And I think this is just a really great tool to help organizations complete the DEEM survey. And if we want to go back one level, we also have some social media tools. I guess one more than that for organizations if you want to promote this and encourage other organizations on your social media channel. These are ways of again, pre-made images that you can copy and paste and use at your discretion to, again, help share this information. And so just in closing, want to reiterate, and Scott will probably do this too, the public survey, that's for individuals, for households. We want to get that in the hands of as many California residents as possible. The DEEM tool, that's for organizations, nonprofits, CBOs who are on the ground doing the work or who want to do the work. So 2 distinct surveys, 2 distinct audiences. And if you have any questions, we are here to help you through this work. And with that, it is the conclusion of my part of the presentation. So Cole, Scott, over to you.
Yep. Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you for sharing about the DEEM tool and the digital equity survey. Outside of those 2 big calls of action that we are asking, there's other ways to get involved. So just as a heads up, there's upcoming Broadband for All BEAD and Digital Equity Tribal consultation. Just note this is for tribal leaders, members, and representatives only. So if you are one of those communities, please join one of the meetings. And if you are, if one of those tribal leaders or members or representatives are in your network, please share this information. Next slide. Additionally, there are other ways for you to get involved as we get closer to the State Digital Equity Plan draft. We do have 2 more statewide digital equity planning group meetings for 2023. And there's outcome area working group meetings, potentially one last one out in July with a date to be determined of tribal collaboration. Again, today was the last health and essential services outcome area working group. Next slide. So finally, really big, here's the calls to action, ways to get involved. Complete and share the digital equity public survey with your friends and family or networks like Sean has shared. Please complete the DEEM tool if that works for your organization, and share it with any organizations that are in your network as well. And finally, keep an eye out for later this summer on providing public comment to a draft state digital equity plan. Next slide. If you are interested in getting connected more, or you have some information to share, or there's questions that weren't answered in the chat today, please feel free to give myself an email or Fiona on the team at the Broadband Equity Partnership a reach out, and we would be happy to share. In the larger digital equity email will find all of us. Again, we can't thank you enough for joining the Essential Services, Accessibility, and Civic Engagement Outcome Area Working Group. We are more than thankful for your participation in the statewide digital equity planning process. Thank you again, and have a great end of your day.